Welcome back to another classic Game Room interview. Today with Dean Thompson of DeansCoolCars.com, and cool and cars are spelled with K's. And let's take a look here at the beautiful El Camino painting that Dean has painted graciously for the show. We'll pull that up with the magic of editing, Dean.
Well, of course.
It's on screen now. Bright, it's red. That's a 1968 El Camino SS 396, right?
Yes, it is.
And did you ever have one of those? Because in our discussions, it seems like you've had just about every car on Earth that's cool, except maybe the A-Team van.
No, I didn't. I had a 69 El Camino and kind of a yellow primer for a short while, and that was it. It needed too much work, so I decided just to let it part ways, and that was the end of that. But I did have an 87 El Camino.
An 87? I thought 86 was the last year they made them. Was it 87?
87 was the last year. Very similar to a 7980, but they had 4 headlights. And I had a ZZ4 crate motor I dropped in, about 400 horsepower. You could do 250-foot burnouts with it. And beautiful. I sold it as one of the cleanest El Caminos in the country when I advertised it. And I've had 3 El Caminos. 3 Rancheros. I had a 1960, a 1979, which is also the last year of the Ranchero. And then I had a 1970 GT with a 351 Cleveland.
I'm in awe of your car collection, or at least your past car collection, because it seems like you move through them. But let me give you guys a little backstory on Dean. You started watching the show, and while people are familiar, I think very familiar these days, with our friend Mohammed in Qatar, who has donated piles of video games and some awesome game consoles, Dean has donated piles of cars. Tons of, like here we've got a 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Firebird that Dean sent to the show. This is just one of many. We've also got another one back here, the James Bond Aston Martin.
Yes, very nice.
The original iconic James Bond Aston Martin, which did arrive in great shape, except one of the rear view mirrors was knocked off. So I like to just say it was shot off by gunmen.
Well, of course.
As James Bond was running away from bad guys doing something. But this is a really nice car. And the license plate. I'll show this to you in the full review. Whoops! I just knocked off the roof. You can actually eject people from this car, and machine gun them, and the license plate rotates. It was in Goldfinger, right?
Yes, it is.
That's the one from Goldfinger. But Dean has donated tons of cars, and you like the Muscle Machines cars, and most of these are on the CGR Garage channel. So between you and our friend Steve from Ontario, Canada, I'm basically in over my ears in cars for the next several years when it comes to...
I'm doing a trade with Steve for Cobra muscle machines in exchange for a couple Hot Wheels, so we're still working on that.
Well, Dean and Steve, I actually have some more cars to send out to both of you guys. I think it'd be funny if I just swapped the cars you guys send to the show with each other. That'd be hilarious. But I always end up with a bunch in my collection as well that I think you guys will enjoy. Like, what do you have there? The 1980s Camaro, right? The Hot Wheels.
Yeah, I love this. This is one of my favorites. This arrived just in time for Christmas. I thought my Christmas was complete with my new PS3. This made it even more so. So thank you very much for this.
Oh, you're welcome.
They're very tubular cars that you sent. I appreciate it.
Well, that's very small compared to the giant painting that you sent to the show. Let's take another look at this painting, because this is what you actually do. You are a professional artist, and are you a professional car collector, or is that more of a hobby?
It's more of a hobby, and again, I'm a little bit older than you, so I started off in 1962, so I was able to collect a lot of these classic cars and muscle cars when they were affordable. My first 1970 Chevelle was my first car for a whopping $350. Today's money, that probably would be $3,500. So you could afford to have these cars back years ago. I had a 1969 Dodge Charger with a 383 Magnum.
Wow.
That I paid $850 for. You could wrap it around a foam pole and go out and buy another one the next day for $1,000. So those days are kind of gone. It's becoming more expensive to collect the cars. So I'm in the process of determining which car I'm going to get next to restore, but I've got a couple candidates. Probably an old 70s Corvette. I've had 3 of those, and I really enjoy the Stingrays like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that probably will be my next car, or a '70 Camaro. My wife likes the Camaro. I kind of like the older Corvettes, so the disco vets, of course.
Well, clearly you need to buy one of each, and then you guys can go drag racing.
Sure.
That's always a good couple activity. Take it out in the street.
Yes.
Get out the married aggression by racing cars. Now tell me about your paintings. I see a couple there hanging in the background. These are done in a very unique way because the El Camino, it's not just like a flat, straight-on painting or a side. It looks like it's actually driving out of the wall to run over you.
It's a concept that I'll tell you where it came from. I did a mural years ago. It's on my website in the bottom of my gallery page of a '55 Chevy truck. A friend of mine in El Segundo, California, he builds custom pro street trucks of the mid '50s, mostly Chevys and '56 Ford pickups, and he lowers them and puts big, wheel tubs in the back so you can put big Mickey Thompson tires. And he built a really nice one. It took him like 5 years to build it. He goes, "You got to do a mural of this." And it looked like Darth Vader. It was lowered. It was all in black. So he said, "Could you paint my truck on my garage wall? And could you also do a Darth Vader helmet?" Because he goes to car shows with the Darth Vader helmet on. I go, "That's a great idea." So at the time, they were re-releasing Star Wars back in the '90s, in the late '90s, mid '90s. And I had a Big Gulp cup that had a beautiful Darth Vader helmet. So I projected that, blew it up, and painted it and the truck. And he loved it. I've got it in my gallery and my website. But he said, "You realize when I move from my condo, I'm going to have to take a Sawzall and cut this thing out and take it with me." And I said, "Well, what a great idea." I mean, people love murals. They love larger pop art pieces that stand out, that have a lot of impact as they are larger. But it's not always practical to paint a mural, then you move. In California, everyone moves all the time. So I thought it was a good idea to take a piece of MDO plywood. It's a 1/2-inch plywood with a paper laminate pressed into it. And then I project the cars up onto it in a 3-dimensional image, draw them, cut them out with a jigsaw, finish the edges and back nice. And then I render a 3-dimensional drawing that's actually a 2-dimensional piece of art. They float about 1 inch off the wall surface. When you put track lighting in front of them, it comes down, creates a nice kind of a natural shadow behind it. So it looks like it's coming right out of the wall.
Well, it's really vibrant. First of all, you're a very talented painter. I will give you credit for that. You're very detail oriented. Because I draw. I'm like a comic book. My background's really more in comic book art.
Things I like about you.
And you can just you can do whatever, and you don't always have to be so precise with comic book art. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Depends on what you're doing. But if you're doing like a car, like the ones I'm looking at behind you, or like the El Camino, I mean, you just have every detail is precise. The edges are all nicely done. And now, what do you use to paint that? Because it's not machined. This is actually hand done.
No, it's all hand done. I'm an old sign painter. I worked in the movie studios as a standby painter, and did a lot of television commercial backdrops and mural work, billboards. In fact, I lived in Florida when Universal Studios first opened up there, and I did billboards between Tampa and Orlando. And back then, if you had hand skills, they'd put you up on a billboard and you'd paint billboards, or I'd letter old vans for plumbing vans and commercial real estate signs. So I had a lot of hand skills right out of high school. I immediately segued right into the sign industry, then later into the motion picture industry. And so I developed a lot of those skills, and everything was done by hand with brushes. Now, I love the computer. You can do great things with the computer. It's wonderful for games and CGI effects. But I still think that there's a market for hand-painted graphics. And I love automobiles. I love to paint things. So each painting is done with acrylic paints by hand. And then there's a little bit of airbrushing. So like the Corvette behind me, that's in its base stages now. And then I'll finally go over that with layers of airbrushing to get the shading on the windshield and the interior and the reflections on the hood and everything. And that just kind of puts it over the top and gives it a sense of realism.
Well, the hand drawn and the hand painted and the airbrushing in particular, these are skills just being lost these days.
Yes, sir.
And it's funny because I've done a lot of historical film work in the past, and in the late, I think, 1800s, machined items were really the sought after pieces. For instance, if you go into Henry Clay Frick's house, who was a big industrialist here in Pittsburgh, they have a lot of machine made tapestries, and those were what people wanted back then because they were made by machines. But now that it's sort of flipping. You want things that are done by hand and by
Exactly.
real artists instead of machines and computers. In fact, that's a huge complaint amongst the pinball industry these days, is that all the new machines are essentially photoshopped, usually with graphics from the movies and stuff, and they don't. While they're colorful and they look nice, stylish, they lack the kind of detail that, say, the black hole machine behind me has. I mean,
Yes.
if you look on that, especially the sides, you can see where somebody airbrushed that thing with a stencil, and it's not as
No,
perfect, and it looks cool.
in
Yeah.
fact, your 2001 pinball review is one of my favorites. Some of those old cabinets had beautiful artwork, very stylized, very indicative of the 60s and the
Hmm?
70s. And I grew up in the pinball arcades as you did, and slowly get into the Pac-Man and the Centipede and a lot of my favorites.
Now you'll
Big.
actually. Well, yeah, I mean, the 2001 machine is actually one that caught. That's the reason I reviewed that. I was walking around the arcade at Papa. In fact,
Yes.
I'm wearing their shirt today. I was walking around their arcade and I saw that and I was like, this is great. I gotta play this. And it just happened. I actually really liked the machine as well. It was one of the older machines. Sometimes they can get a little repetitive, but I thought that one was quite fun.